I guess that means that you're trapped in here for the next little bit. So my name is Rob. Just a little bit of a background. I've traveled in Asia, I guess, 3 different times. The appeal for me is my money goes further. There's things there that you can't get in part of the world. Part of what I'm going to talk about is the Elephant Nature Park, which really and truly was not on my radar, but a lady that we worked together with, and she decided that she wanted to come on my next trip because I was there the year before. So she said we should go, and what wound up being what I thought was a day was a week volunteering at an elephant park, and it was great. We're considering going back this year. Also did a 14-day tour with G Adventures. G Adventures is a Canadian group, and the appeal for me, my wife passed away about 2 years ago, and so when you're traveling as a single, you're often charged double the rates. Whereas with G Adventures, you can pay for your own room, or you can pay to share with a room. It's cheaper. The 2 trips I took there, everybody else chose to pay for a separate room, and I never had to pay, and I had a separate room anyway. So there you go. And Hanoi was simply the last place that we finished our trip at. So I'll begin with, first of all, Calgary. Leaving Calgary, it's about, well, it's about an hour and a bit trip to Vancouver. It's about 13 hours to Bangkok. Don't take anything but a direct flight if you're going. It's just too darn far. And then we decided to avoid the, like getting a hotel, then getting back to the hotel, because we were going to go straight up to Chiang Mai, which is about an hour north of there. And these are names that you become familiar with when you're there. So there I am in the airport. A trip over there, like just listening to Nina talk about going on her cruise trip. Normally, a cruise trip at the beginning and the end, you have a hotel room. Those are probably between $350 and $500 a night. You could fly from here, Bangkok, spend a week at the elephant farm for less than $2,000. Just to put it in comparison. And hotels, I did not stay in a single hotel that was outside of the tour that was over $30 Canadian. Each of them had breakfasts. There was a king-size bed in there. There was at least 12 feet by 12 feet, and I'm going, why? There definitely were not Motel 6s. So, when you do travel, when you do travel over there, you want to take something that's going to be, you're able to get around with. So my luggage was that and a backpack, which was not very big, and across the body, kind of it's a bigger bean bag. It also, what they call bun bag. It carried a few extra things. So as we were gathering together in the airport, that's Gloria. She and I were traveling together, and because I have some folks from Ukraine staying with me, Marina and Jane were part of it. So we met up in Vancouver. And here we are. No pictures in the airport. This is Chiang Mai. Everywhere you go in all of Asia, there's a Buddhist temple. Probably within 5 minutes walk from our hotel in Chiang Mai, there were at least 5 Buddhist temples. So if you like Buddhist temples, this is the place to go. I'd kind of seen them all and done them all, so I only wanted to see ones that were really out of the ordinary, and there was one coming up that I'll show you. They have interesting little characters that you see along the way. This is outside a drugstore. So she's out there just advertising what they sell inside. Daytime, like this is on the sidewalk, and daytime in all of Asia, nighttime, pardon me, you cannot walk on the sidewalk hardly at all because it's filled with people selling stuff, usually food, and parking motorbikes. You're not supposed to, but everybody parks a motorbike on the sidewalk. In the Buddhist culture, they like the whole idea of elephants. It plays a big part in their lives, and the elephant is revered. And at the same time, they are put to do jobs that are really awful. And I'll tell you more about that later. So this is outside, it wasn't even a Buddhist temple. It's outside another hotel. This is Gloria getting fixed up into a dress that she wanted, because I said, you're supposed to wear dresses because women cannot go into a Buddhist temple if you can only have your ankle showing. So you have to have something that's longer. And they also have, I call them elephant pants because they have elephants on. And they're light, they're comfortable, and they're like $5 for that dress, just to put in comparison with what you might hear. Well, if you're in Chiang Mai, one of the things you can do, and I booked ahead, I wanted to do a cooking course. So they picked us up at the hotel, and they whisked us away to get the items that we were going to cook, and then we went out into their little garden that they had as well. And this is the lady that was looking after us. So that's her little garden. We went to a group of stalls that sold other kinds of meat and so on before then. No, we didn't have this kind of fire going on. This was done to show us what could happen. Essentially, if you get oil going really, really hot, and then you throw in vegetables that are soaked in water, it'll immediately flare up. And it's quite a visual effect. And that's traditional stir fry in their minds, though. So here we are. Everybody had a station. You figured out what you were going to make, and we're in the process of making food. We all had the fancy red aprons. One of the dishes we made, and actually the spring rolls tasted about as good as any I've eaten. So it was good. And there I am. When I was on my trip, I grew out my beard, and because it's a lot easier to not have to worry about stuff. I'll tell you about that a little later when we went to a homestay. These are some of the other dishes. We made 5 different dishes, and all of them tasted very good. You've really got to come with an empty stomach for these things, though, because you get filled up. And the food is tasty. Every single thing that we added with spice was mixed in a mortar and pestle. So they're big on that. Okay, so this is the Elephant Nature Park. It is located about an hour north of Chiang Mai, which is about an hour flight from Bangkok. And there, a lady by the name of Lek Sharo, I can't pronounce her last name. Everybody just calls her Lek. She's a lady who stands up about this high. You could almost walk under an elephant's belly and the elephant wouldn't have to do anything. She's just a tiny thing. And when she was a kid, she was gifted an elephant by her grandfather, because elephants did things on farms. They did things, they begged, take them and use them as to do tours. They were used in the logging industry. Most of the elephants that she has at this particular place, because she has several of them throughout Asia, most of them arrive there with some kind of psychological problems. I don't know if any of you in here have ever had horses. But when you have a horse, you break the horse. Well, breaking the horse involves sitting on a horse and riding it, I think, until the horse stops bucking. And then you do it again a couple of times. And by then, the horse knows who's in control. Elephants are put into a squeeze when they're about 3 to 5 years old. It's just enough room for the baby elephant to get into. They close the end of it, and they basically torture that elephant for about 5 days, 3 to 5 days. And they use these hooks. It's like a wooden handle thing, but it's got a long pointy end on it, a hook. And they just pound the elephant's head with that. They dig it into the ears. Many of them have holes in their ears where they give instruction. The elephant doesn't comply. They let them know that you need to comply. And as a baby elephant comes out of that, they don't even want to be around their mother because they're only worried about whether or not they're going to have a more peaceful atmosphere. So this particular view is a river that goes between one part of the park and the other part of the park. And we stayed there for 6 days. It was vegan food. That was my biggest worry. I'm a meat eater. But I will say for the month that I spent in Asia, the week at the Elephant Nature Park was the best food I've ever eaten. I didn't know what I was eating half the time. But it was extremely good. There were no snacks, and that's not like me either. You had a breakfast, you had a lunch, and you had supper. And each day we would go and sit on stools, kind of like this tall one that's up here on stage with me. And we had a little platform about this wide where we ate our meals, breakfast, dinner, and supper. And look right over, and there's elephants. They were probably, well, they're closer than all of you are out there, every day. And they'd be wandering off to go across the river. The elephants do like water. The cost when I went was about $650 for volunteer. What were some of my jobs? Well, we unloaded watermelons, humongous amounts of watermelons. We unloaded 2 truckloads while I was there, and it's basically pass, pass, pass. And if you dropped one, there was another place where the dropped ones went, because elephants, this is the elephant kitchen, or part of it, elephants eat, they told us, between 800 and 1,000 pounds of food a day. And these are the small watermelons that you can buy in the grocery stores that are about this big around. That goes right in an elephant's mouth, and that's one bite. There was corn as well. Corn involved shucking the corn, then the awful job of taking the corn off the husks. I don't know. They had more than elephants. They had 700 dogs, 3,000 cats, an assortment of birds, and pigs and water buffalo. And all of them all about giving animals a pleasant place to live out their latter years. Probably my least favorite job there. And our jobs in the elephant kitchen usually were about 3 hours, from 8 o'clock until 11. Because at 11 o'clock, we go home to our rooms, wash up, come back for lunch, and then in the afternoon, we'd have a tour amongst the elephants. There was nothing between us and elephants most of the time. So that was kind of cool. 2 days I spent taking bananas off banana stalks. 2 days. And when I thought I got to the end of it, they came in with another truckload. And I don't know who unloaded those. They would be very heavy. But we basically put the bananas, cut them into bunches. Freddie, who was the guy that was my roommate, he would have a little trolley, and he would load the bananas into the cart. He'd whisk them away, and then 4 ladies would put them on shelves of designated ripeness. And there, they have a hands-off policy. So they encourage elephants to do what they want them to do with a ripe banana. They will do anything for a ripe banana, believe me. But that's a hard job, because in Asia, most of the chairs are about that high. Not like what you're sitting on. There was a few places we went out to have a drink, and they have these little plastic chairs that look like children's chairs, because they're not very far from the ground, most people in that part of the world. So I had a little trouble getting down and a little trouble getting back up. But this is a big thing, that they have something coming in every day, truckloads of it. One of the jobs we did, we made a cake for an elephant, Patricia. We didn't know. All of these 114 elephants had names. I don't remember any of them, but basically the cake was about, I'd say 3-4 inches thick. It was made with sticky rice, and then we'd take ripe bananas and we'd squish them in our fingers and mix it in with the sticky rice. Add some food coloring, and then the ladies, who were much more creative than I, would make the sign of the happy birthday whatever elephant out of pumpkin. And actually, this is not one we made, this is one they made. Because there are people who are doing nothing but making cakes for elephants. So it costs a lot to raise elephants and keep them in captivity there, relative captivity. If you wanted to do something for somebody who they don't need anything, but you want to recognize their birthday. Well, one of the things you can do from Canada is you can buy a birthday cake for an elephant. They show it being made, they show the video of the elephant eating it, and it'll have "from you" on it. And so if you're looking for somebody who's got everything, that's something you can do. And the elephants liked it. Ours tended to have more stuff on it, And it was interesting because they would take the fruit off the top many times and scatter it on the ground and then scoop up with amazing dexterity this sticky rice banana goop that made up the cake. They liked it. So this is next to the river, and the this one here is the mom, and the son is over here. The male and female elephants, after about 5 or 6 years old, are separated from females. Anybody know why? Yeah, you've heard of when animals here go into rut. Okay, in this part of the world, when an elephant goes into, they call it must. Many of the mahouts, the people who are they control the elephants, many of them are killed. So almost no females go into that job because it can be dangerous. Males, 100 times more dangerous than females, and they're much bigger animals. So she comes across every day and says hello to her son by reaching over the fence with her trunk. And later on in the evening, you would hear them talking back and forth from one side of the river to the other. So it's kind of cute. This is an elephant coming up past us from the river. Oops, sorry. It is amazing. You're videoing an elephant coming up, and you don't see the elephant behind you. Elephants have an amazing way of creeping up on you because their feet are probably, well, I don't know, that big around, but they are very, very soft pads. So we're standing right next to elephants at this point. They have a viewing area back over here that kind of allows you to see a little bit more, and the riverside. Mostly it's designed for the people that come in for a half a day. And you could tell who they were. They were not like us because we had volunteer shirts. And so that's Gloria and I after in the evening. We always came back, maybe had an evening drink, something cold, and then waited for supper to be served. This is Bob Barker. Anybody remember who he was? This crowd maybe would. But Bob Barker paid for this elephant bus. So if you could imagine trying to move a 6,000 to a 9,000 pound elephant places, you need a vehicle that's got good support. I know when I was in Nepal, I saw an elephant in the back of a pickup truck. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is not going to end well. But these guys, they would go maybe into Cambodia, maybe to the north, and they would pick up an elephant. Picking up an elephant involved trying to get an elephant onto this thing, coaxing it with ripe bananas, keeping it wet while they were traveling because elephants need lots of water, and having the proper kind of a vehicle to transport it with. They have 2 of those now. As just so you know, Lex spends about $10,000 an animal to bring them in because they don't let them go. The day we left, she told us that she was asked if she could take 60 elephants. Because, I mean, if you're looking after a cow, you're not feeding them 800 to 1,000 pounds of food a day. But if you're looking after an elephant and you're not getting income coming in from that elephant, you still have to find food for that elephant. So it's a very expensive proposition. And there we are. We're just chilling out. And every day we would go for a little walk, our group. And Gloria's off on the side of the group. And there they are. They're chowing down on corn stalks. And what goes in one side comes out looking very much like corn on the other. This is the day that this is our group. We were divided into, there was about 50, 60 of us, and we were divided into work groups. So the first day we went out, and this is our group. As you can see, most are female. And we were going out to get palm leaves or palm trees. So somebody cut it down, and then you bring it along. Have any of you ever cut down a palm tree? No? What Gloria's carrying there is very light, but when you get a big one that's like 10 inches around, all of the moisture in a palm tree goes to the bottom. And as soon as you cut into it, there's a million ants that show up. And I often had that when I put it on my shoulder and I'd carry it over to the truck. And it was kind of nasty with the ants and also very heavy. And we loaded it up into the elephant kitchen because they would cut it up into pieces and feed various parts of it to the elephants. You can see there's still bananas. Here's another view of the elephant kitchen. So watermelon down here that had fallen in our transfer to get it into the pile there. This crew was doing cutting up the corn. Nobody really liked to do the corn because some of the corn had been there for a while, so it had passed its due date. But the animals weren't bothered by it. Here's me getting some of that stuff. And this is a typical meal. Every meal we had the best tasting watermelon and pineapple. Can you guess what I did not eat the entire time that was a fruit? Bananas. I never touched a banana. I should have because they taste better over there. But like this is a typical meal and you could go back, it was a smorgasbord. In many cases, I didn't know what it was, but it tasted so good. The spring rolls were ridiculous. And then over here, there were these long, stringy things that it kind of looked like it might have been a marine animal, but vegans don't eat any of that. It was mushrooms that had been deep fried. And oh my goodness, I went back for those after. You take a little bit the first time, you don't take too much. Especially if you're not vegan and you've never tried this stuff before. But I was never disappointed with the food for any of the meals. Here's part of our group who are still trying to shuck corn. That was the last part of the elephant kitchen that kind of got cleared out was the corn section. And this is a gigantic tree. It was like the ones the northern Seattle, those kind of trees. Only they have these long hanging down things here on the side of it. And it was growing right where we had our meals. Weirdly, elephants get cold. This is a place where in the morning you wear a light fleece. By 9 o'clock, you don't want that fleece. It's 30 to 37 degrees midday. Again in the evening, it's 30 degrees here most days this summer. So we've experienced that. And all the rooms that they had given us to stay in, they all had air conditioning. So that was a real relief. The ones that show up new and who are older elephants, they would typically give them a blanket. And they would build a fire for them. And the new ones who arrived, the mahouts, the elephant keeper, each one would be assigned one elephant and they would stay with that elephant overnight outside. So they really look after the elephants. February. Yeah, if you're looking for a good time to go, check to make sure it's not monsoon weather, because one of the things that they told us in the list of things to take along was rubber boots. I took my rubber boots. I didn't put on rubber boots once, even when we picked up elephant dung. It's too hot. I just left them there. So somebody else, maybe in the wet season, could get into mine. No. So elephant dung is highly prized for it's like a high-end manure. When an elephant dies, they do because they are generally getting a 60 to 80, 87-year-old elephant when we were there. When they die, they dig a hole for the elephant. They put the elephant's remains in the hole. They allow the elephants to gather around for a day or two and pay their last respects. And in many cases, they'd never seen this elephant before. They cover it up and they use lots of dung around it and they plant a tree. And those areas have kind of concrete structures around the outside that are probably about this high and about that much room in between where a person could get in but an elephant couldn't. Because as soon as you have a tree, those trunks reach very high, and they will rip off branches and they'll eat the whole thing. There will be no trees left if the elephants had their way. They do like it. But did that answer your question? This was a very weird thing that we decided to do. So they have 700 dogs. These dogs are not able to walk. So we went for a day down to walk dogs, and I thought they'd be dogs that they have little wheeled ones, the ones that have mobility. No, we didn't get those. We got the ones in the baby carriages. And so they did not smell so good. And it would be a dog you'd euthanize here, but they don't do that. Okay? So we took them for a walk. And it was kind of nice to see a different part of the world. One of the areas that was neat to walk through is this covered area here. And they had lots of stuff like that on the... All right, so that's me in the middle. And there's Freddie, my roommate. And I'm not sure who this lady was, but she seemed to be an expert on bananas. Every now and then you would use your knife and you'd chop off a banana bunch. So I could work in a grocery store that has bananas, just chop because I know how to do it and put it into bunches. But you can see how low the chair is that I'm sitting on. It's like ridiculously low. And as they get ripe, then the mahouts would come in. They'd have a little cloth bag and they'd take the ripe ones with them so they could feed them. And there's Freddie with his little wheeled cart. And this whole area here is all cages to put bananas of varying ripeness in. And there's part of our crew. So the lady here, she was from Germany. Didn't speak a lot of English, but she had the best time there. She just loved elephants. And these two were from Seattle area, and Gloria she lives in Camrose. This is our cake that we made, and so the two of them are carrying it out to the elephant. It looked quite appetizing, I would say, but the elephant took everything off the top and moved it all to the side and went after the bottom part. One of the things that they did was they took us over to where the males are. So there's a walkway, a big steel walkway that goes over there. The males weigh, let's see, where did I put this? The males weigh about almost 9,000 pounds, and the females, which they have most of, weigh somewhere around 6,000. So they're quite a difference. And they have to be segregated. They have to be even segregated from their fellow males. So she really doesn't like to take in male elephants. She doesn't like to take in female elephants that are pregnant, but sometimes you don't know. And the only little ones, they were so much fun to watch, there were 3 of them, and they all arrived pregnant, and they had little ones there. One night, Freddie said we should go for a drink at go out on the town. It wasn't much of a town, but it was nearby. And this sign here, this is an elephant crossing sign. I thought, you'll never see one of those again. So we went through darkness to discover the place we were going to was closed. One of the things that they do at the elephant farm is they have sponsored this whole building here, and that is a school. And it's a school for the mahouts' families, children, and all the people that work there. There's so many people that are charged with cooking for a large number of people coming through and doing some of the big jobs that are there. And the school put on a little bit of a show for us. It was a dance thing, and it was too cute because they had girls that put on these masks, assumed they were bad guy masks, and they dance. But the little kids, like the kindergarten grade 1 kids, they'd all creep up to the front row, and when they swooped over them, they'd scream and run back, come back to the front. They thought it was great fun. And this girl, she wanted to talk a little bit, and maybe this guy is just too cute. He would be about this high. Have any of you ever petted an elephant? A baby elephant is like petting a steel brush. The hair on their back is like ridiculously coarse. And they loved rolling in mud. A red clay was brought there, and it was wet, and they would be in it and just having their best day. And this guy had already been in it, so that's all that's left of that, about 5 minutes of that cake we brought out to him. And they all tend to have a reddy hue, and that's because they would throw the clay on top of themselves to keep the bugs off, and so on. This is Derek. This is Lex's husband. He's from Toronto. And one day he was the one who took us for a walk with the elephants. And he would holler out to the elephants, and as soon as they heard his voice, there'd be like a dozen elephants stampeding towards us. And they always would come to a stop, butts out, trunks in, and they would wrap their trunks around him. So they knew him very, very well. And he was telling stories about the various elephants. One of the elephants, this guy here, he was from Laos. I don't know if you know anything about Laos, but Laos is the most bombed country in the world because when the Americans were involved in the Vietnamese War, they had to get rid of all their ordnance before they got back to their bases. And if they didn't, because they weren't permitted to land with ordnance, so they had to drop their stuff. And back then, that consisted of something called cluster bombs. So it'd be a big, long shell, maybe 8 feet long, and it would drop, and only about 60% of it would actually explode. And elephants and people would step on them. The elephant here blew off the bottom of its foot while she was logging. She was made to continue working that day. So Derek had a close relationship with her, and every time she would get close to him, she'd lift up the leg that she had been lifting up for him to help care for him. So I thought that was kind of cute. By the time both Lek and husband are done when the elephants come around them, they are filthy because they've got mud, they've got whatever on them. But they do love their people. There's a baby one. He loved to run around and chase through crowds of us. There'd be this baby elephant just charging towards some dog that would find its way amongst us. And we all had to scatter. The little guy got away. And occasionally he'd get into their gardens. And you could see the nannies, because moms have the babies, but the nannies look after them when they're little. You know that. And they were going out trumpeting at the baby elephant who's in there eating whatever the garden stuff is, and they had to shoo him out of there. This is a load of corn that would come in daily. Those are corn stalks. Like whatever you can put on, as high as you could put on, is fair game. And that happened daily. You'd see that coming through. Have any of you in here ever gone on an elephant thing, a ride where they went into a river? I did when I was in Chitwan National Park in Nepal one year. I won't do it again because I know what happens, how the elephants are treated to get to that state. Something I didn't know. These people, there's an elephant place across the river. They are not attached to them, and people pay to go and bathe elephants. There are two things that happen when an elephant goes into water. They pee and they poo. Now, how big is their poo? Well, their poo would be about like that and about like that. And you could tell what they were eating because it comes out not like a cow, but you could still see whatever it was that they had been eating. So these people have no clue, especially if they're downstream of the elephant, that is, because it's going to happen the moment they hit the water. Kind of gross about it. This was our manure run, or as they called it, we were shoveling shit that day. That was what they called it. And they had the most ancient thing pulling this wagon. And we would come along, the mahouts every day, because each of the elephants had a night, a place that they would go at night. It was had metal, had a roof on it. And the elephants had a pile of sand so they could lay down, because they needed something to get back up on, because it was difficult. They had an old elephant that showed up just before we did, and she was, I think, 87. She had never, ever laid down to sleep, ever. She was on a chain that was about that long, and so she would stand there doing this, because that's all the movement she was permitted to. When they got her, they had the same kind of a structure for her. She laid down at night. She couldn't get up. What did the people there do? They took the roof off. They brought in a crane. They lifted the elephant up and got her on her feet that day and the next day. And then by the third day, the elephant had figured out how to lean against the pile of sand that they had for her. So the mahouts gather the individual elephants' manure, move it to the end of their, you call it like a little corral thing, but it's all made out of metal. It's serious stuff. In Bangkok and Chiang Mai, you will see these kitchens outside. They're street vendor kitchens. So what they're trying to do here is kind of mimic what they do there. And basically they have a soup stock here, and that's Lek. She's giving out everybody noodles. And then you could also add whatever is down here into your soup. It was really quite good. And it was super, super fresh. Everything we ate was ultimately fresh. Oh, out of order. This is our shit crew, as we called it. And everybody, you know, there was nobody who was going, oh, you want us to do that? We all did it because everybody was doing it, right? This is one of the wagons that came in the next day, and we unloaded it. I was actually charged with getting in the wagon and throwing the watermelons to the first person. So that was my job. I did that one day, and the other day I was the first person to catch it. And there's Lek, and you can see how big she is next to the elephants. She's so little. This is her bag of, guess what's in that bag? Ripe bananas. Because she has a hands-off policy, except the elephants don't have a hands-off policy with her or her husband. And whenever she's around, the elephants just stampede towards her. They protect her in a big group, and then when everything calms down, one of them will tuck her under the belly of the elephant, which is where they put babies to further protect her. Lek gave a talk to us on the last day there. You can't see it very well. She's wearing knee-high rubber boots to do the presentation at night. It's not what you would think that a presenter would typically be doing, but she basically told the story of how she got started and so on. And she's a very, I don't know, you really feel for her getting started with this kind of a thing. And actually, she is coming to Vancouver in October. There's a couple of things that by the door there if you're interested. Or if you felt inclined, it would probably be cheaper to go from here to Vancouver, from Vancouver to Bangkok, Bangkok to Chiang Mai, and spend a week than it would be to spend 3 nights in Vancouver. Just to put it into perspective. All right, so these are just some random pictures of the elephants and us out wandering around them. I love this one. This really shows her relationship with elephants. I asked Lek, have you ever been worried about being trampled by an elephant? Right? Not once. She did have a movie that came out. It's called Love and Bananas. You can see it on YouTube. There's a charge to watch it. And it basically talks about her going and getting an elephant. It took 2 days to get it back to her place there. And so she invited all of us in turn. If there was a group of us, come on over there, sit down with the elephants close. She's a very special lady. And that's the group that was there for a week. Most people come back yearly. Most people come back with friends. So it's kind of escalated. And actually, Lori and I were talking about going back. But the spaces are tighter now because people are getting wind of this. People come through half-day tours and full-day tours as well. All right, this is a little bit later. Okay, this is part of our Ski Adventures trip. This is kind of a mountain area that we had been to. Gloria's just kind of feeling the freedom there. It wasn't cool there. It was hotter than Hades. This guy is typical what you'd see on the street. He's got his little tiny chairs set up over here, and he's making pancakes, or basically it was a dough, and then he'd sprinkle in some kind of condensed milk and some kind of fruit, and fold it over after he's fried it. Bob here was from England, and Bob was quite a storyteller. He also liked beer. And you could get beer by they were in giant containers. They bring them out. That's about as big as I went. Anybody want to take a guess what you paid for beer over there? It was between 75 cents and about $1.50. I drank more beer on that trip than I have for a long time for two reasons. I think the beer was probably less likely to cause a problem than the water was. But anyway, yeah. And my shirt, I don't know if you can read it, it says Chang Beer. And the two elephants on the front of that are part of the Chang beer motto were actually like silhouettes of one of Lex's elephants. That's what she told us. Must be true. So here we are. We're in the north part of in Laos, and these are prosthetics that people had made on their own because poor farmers can't afford to go to the city and find a prosthetician who can cut and make something that's going to fit for you. And these are retired ones after somebody else got figured out something better. And it was very humbling just walking through there. These are cluster bombs that had not blown up. Basically, they didn't detonate them. And they are in farmers' fields. Kids find them. They think it's a ball. They throw it, and they lose an arm. They're part of their face. And if it's the dad who's working in the fields, it could be in water where they grow rice, if he is lost to the family, then he is a breadwinner. Family is often destitute. Here we are as part of our little tour. This is a 14-day tour. So started in Bangkok, flew to Chiang Mai, into the elephant farm, back to Chiang Mai, back to Bangkok, night train, back to Chiang Mai. So it's kind of a weird thing, but anyway, this is a way to get around. The guy at the front is driving not much more than a motorcycle, and they're everywhere. Here we are, part of the tour. We're in the northern part of Thailand, just right on the edge going into Laos. Laos is probably the cheapest place that we traveled through. So this is our whole crew right here. There were 10 of us. And the chief, this was our individual guide. Once we hit Laos, he traveled with us for 3 days because we were on a 30-meter longboat. And it's the chief. I don't see the chief. There's the chief's wife. We went there for a meal at their place. So it was kind of neat. We'd go, it was a homestay, and I was kind of worried about that. But there were things on that trip that homestay was probably one of my favorite parts, looking back. We did they called it an adrenaline tour. Basically, we got in these kayaks. We kayaked about 12K down the river. It didn't do my back very much, but we saw this group of kids along the way, and the ladies thought they had this game where they were skipping, but they had a rope between two girls, and the object was to step on the rope, then the next skip would land in the middle. And none of the ladies could master it. So these little kids followed us around in the evening while they were making supper. And it was one of my favorite parts. This is one of the meals on that day trip. And the place we were put up had 3 one-year-old triplets. And this is Mo and Bob, and they had a room of their own, and I had a small room of my own as well. It was the most interesting setup I've ever been in. The little kids would come over because I had a white beard, and beards are uncommon for men there. They'd come over and they would pull on my beard. They wanted to get thrown up in the air. They wanted to get tickled. And we were their entertainment. Everybody who came in was the entertainment for these people. So they didn't have much. They had their living room was barricaded. I probably would do in my house if you've got 1-year-old triplets. It was quite a deal. And that's basically what their living room looked like. And he worked for, I'm sorry, it's not a very clear picture. It's one that somebody else had taken. He worked for the government there. This is a meal that they served, and we'd take what we wanted from each of those bowls. I had the biggest smile this day. Same group of little girls, we landed there. They followed us around. We got up to the chief's house. Supper's going to be a while. And I looked, and they had a little cooler, freezer, and had ice cream in. I said, how much is the ice cream in here? And they said, oh, it's so many dong. Well, I'm not making the figuring out, the math. Somebody says, it's about 5 cents for crying out loud. So I asked these girls if they wanted ice cream. All of them said yes. So they understand that. And then they went and told 2 friends, and before you knew it, I think half of the community's kids showed up, and for less than $2, I gave them all an ice cream cone. I had the biggest grin on my face that day. It was my favorite time. And it was something that I was not sure about because it was a homestay and I didn't know what that was going to look like. But it was absolutely spectacular there. Going into Laos, we traveled on these crazy roads. It would be like going on the Going to the Sun Road, if you've ever done that. Almost, but it's very high in Laos, and there's only so far you could go. This is right on the edge of Laos and Vietnam. So they do have mountains there. When we were in, I think this is Chiang Rai, these are the monks going with their bowls. They have great big gold bowls, and they're going to get alms. Now, I don't know if you know how that works in the Buddhist culture, but they're not permitted to make food themselves, and they have to have all their food eaten, I think, by sunrise. So this is 5 o'clock in the morning. We get up and we walk down to see this. And in years past, what would happen is the locals would prepare food for the monks, making it on their own. Now they have stands where you can buy food and rent little chairs, those tiny chairs, sit on, and then the monks would come by, and they can't take it from you, but if they say they'd like it, they'd give a nod, and then the person would put it in their bowl. The sad thing is at the end of that row of monks, on a couple of occasions, we saw 2 different groups. There was an older woman and a boy that looked like he was maybe 7 or 8. He had his bowl, and she had a bowl. And that meant they were even more destitute than the monks were begging for food, basically is what it is. In the group, you can see some of them are not very big. They're children, actually. In many parts of the world where the Buddhists have children with them, it's a place where families want their children to be educated. They can't afford to educate them, and they can't afford to feed them. So they would send them to live with the monks for a year or so. And I know one of the CEOs that we had with us in the previous year's trip, he was a monk for a year, and he said, you're always hungry because you can't eat after that time period. And some of the food, like a lot of it would be prepackaged stuff that people were buying and putting in, but there'd be some people would make sticky rice, wrap it up in banana leaves, which is very kind of more common in the older days. Does anybody know what these are? That's durian. If you go into Superstore, I think it's probably the only place in Red Deer that carries it. There's a sign in every hotel room. No smoking and no eating durian. There's a reason. There are 3 little, like they look like not really orange, but sort of orange, like a segment of an orange. And it's the most disgusting thing I've ever tried to eat. They gave some to each of us, and we all sampled it. And I did try that. I stayed away from the fried tarantulas, but it was equally bad. So this is a little thing I had to take a picture of. 280 million cluster munitions were dropped in Laos, and 80 million failed to detonate. To give you an idea, there's still a group from Canada and probably about 6 or 8 other countries who go over and they use they can use what somebody would look for in the sand on a beach to see if there's like a detector of some kind. But they often use trained rats. And if the rat steps on it, they aren't going to detonate it. This would be on land, not in water. So they're still trying to get rid of that. That's a big problem over there. Anybody an electrician in the room? When you're in Asia, if you look in the very narrow area between 2 buildings, you will see stuff like this and you're kind of going, oh my goodness, there is no code whatsoever. It's just, did it work? And that's how they operate over there. One of the places that I didn't think would be very interesting, but we stopped at a place where they took silk from worms and made it into cloth. And these ladies here are working on looms and making the most amazing pieces of cloth. The bathroom there, you had to see this. Cold water, turn right. Left, and wait 5 minutes. A lot of places over there, if you're at a beach place, they will use hose set up, or they'll have a great big black container on the roof. And you can have a shower in the morning, but it'll be cold. But in midday to late afternoon, it's going to be warm. One of the foods, one of the dishes we had, sticky rice seems to be the norm. I'm not a big fan of sticky rice, except when in sushi, but they like it over there. One of the things you can see, that these ladies, there's about 8 of them, they went through the whole crowd, were sitting on the floor, which I've got 2 hip replacements, so it was difficult to get on the floor, let alone get back up. And they would come around and they would say a little prayer and they'd tie on this white string. So my wrists were full of these things. And then the next place we go to, there was a lot of repetition of that. And I kept them all on until basically the day I flew home. This was an interesting location. This was this is in near Luang Prabang, and it's at the Khoi Si waterfalls. And there were like 5 stretches of waterfalls. And this is a welcome place to go and get cooled off. So that's our crew there. And we're all down there enjoying the water. The only thing is, I wore my sandals into the water, and everybody else just came in barefoot. Water shoes would be a good idea, because at the side of this thing, it's just like rip your feet to shreds kind of stuff. But the water was great. One thing they don't have figured out is places to go to the bathroom at this place and places to change. It was all in the same location, and the bathroom didn't really take what was going into the bathroom away very well, and you had very little area to do your changing. So I went up to change, I turned around and came back, and I thought, I don't want to wear these wet clothes home or the bathing suit home. So I went down, and it was disgusting. However, the place was beautiful, and a little bit of a hike to come up to it. There's a group of us. The lady on the right was from New Zealand, but she's Canadian now, and she was traveling with her daughter for 4 months, and they lived out of 1 knapsack. It was not very big. They had 1 pair of shoes, which I thought was kind of, I'd have sandals if I was going there. And her daughter was going to go and try out for the women's hockey team that country when they were done their 4-month trek. Oh, okay. A little out of order. Sorry. This whole thing was put together by my 17-year-old Ukrainian, like a granddaughter. And she put it together for me, and so I take no sign that I did this. And some of it bounced up back out of order. This lady, who is not very young, is spinning silk. And nothing is fancy about how it's done. Here she is taking, in this case, that's cotton balls, and this machine takes the seeds out of the cotton. And then these were silkworms. It's got to come from something, right? The cocoon that they're looking for. And they have little places for them to, I guess, form a cocoon in. So you see cotton over here, big piles of cotton over here, and then this is the discarded stuff that didn't meet the There were places where you could try on clothing there. So Gloria was doing the pose with some culturally appropriate attire that you could buy if you wished. Everywhere there's a night market, everywhere. And night markets are amazing. If you feel like you want a little snack, you go out and they will give you a plate. It'll cost you maybe $1.50, $2.50 Canadian to eat the stuff that they have. In Laos, almost everybody who had these little stalls, they'd be all on their phones. They could care less if you're standing there looking at some of the stuff. It was a totally different environment from Bangkok or from Thailand and from Vietnam. When you get into those countries, they see somebody coming to their stall, they're there right now. And there's a price, and that price changes as you walk away, and it gets lower and lower and lower. So there's a little bit of discussion about what you want. This is one of the restaurants that we stayed at, or we went out for. This is our CEO, and he traveled the entire time with us. He knows Thai, Lao, Vietnamese, and he was actually from Cambodia. Absolutely great guy. So we're having a meal, and there was some kind of a upstairs, so somebody went up there to take a picture. We spent 3 days on these long boats. They're about 30 meters long. They're huge. They had like little beds in the middle part. They had seats to sit on, and then partway through our day trip on them, we would be served a supper, the lady for us. Delicious. And this is, we hiked up this way. Why would we hike up? Because there's a little bit of a Buddhist kind of cavern. And the stairs. The stairs are about that high. It was, they're short people, but they didn't make it so it was easy to get around. So it's like to get up there, and by now it's about 37 degrees. So the only cooling part was when you got up here to the top where the cave was. And there's Gloria. She's like an antelope, so it didn't cost her anything getting up there. And people would show up. They would bring their own little Buddhist figurines and plant them there, or the monks would. I did not see a monk here, but it was kind of hidden away and was used periodically. Along the river, you might see big outfits like this, and they have quite a gold mining thing set up alongside the river. You'd see them panning for gold and doing something much more involved on the Mekong. The Mekong River, we went in the dry weather. So somebody asked what time it is. Don't go in monsoon weather. It'll be cheaper, but it'll be horribly wet. The water would come up to here on the Mekong during the monsoon weather. And so when you hear about places getting flooded, normally what they would do in this area here and the farms, they would plant the rice in advance of the monsoon weather, and then the monsoons would hit, and then it would help with the growing of the rice because it got wet. Getting on and off these things was interesting. There was always a hill to climb, but you know, we all managed, and that was our little boat. I had several naps on that, but I didn't necessarily. No. The family who owned it actually lived on it. There was mom, dad, and some other adult, and they helped with the driving of it. Now, I don't know how you drive. There were rapids on this river too, so you really had to know what you were doing. The 30-meter boat was a little tricky to get to. And this is Pakpak town, so it was en route to Hanoi. These people on the side, they are panning for gold. Corn was a popular thing to grow, and other things. You name it, they grew it. When you see their little markets, it was amazing. So this is kind of part of the inside. They'd have these nice little padded areas. You'd go there until the sun was directly above you, and then it was too hot to be there, so you had moved into the seats that were up front and at the back. And probably every day, somebody was falling asleep there. We were often picked up at the river's edge by little people carrying devices like this, and it worked well. Armed with pointy sticks, and I know how to use them. What do you suppose this lady had in here? Knitting needles everywhere. She spent a whole day back at that place where they were making silk. She paid for a special driver to drive her out there, and she spent a whole day learning about that because she was really into knitting and stuff. And this is her little carry-on. She had no trouble at all. Nobody had a problem with her knitting needles there. I thought it was quite cute. This is one of the views in the evening on the Mekong. Just gorgeous. A horrible place to have supper. Like, it's just gorgeous. And the meals everywhere were good. Meals between about $4.50 to $6.50 with a beer. Water would be about 30 cents cheaper than beer. So I did not drink any water unless it was bottled. But if it's like China, where I was talking to a guy who was traveling for different reasons in China, and he tested the water, that was his job. None of it came up to Canadian standards. So even bottled water could be suspect. Tea, he figured it was going to be boiled, so that would be helpful. And I thought maybe beer would maybe be fermented, and that might kill some of the other stuff there. I was testing it, and I found that, like, there was all kinds of beer, but I always, if we were in a certain area, I would drink that beer, and I would always look down, and I would pick the cheapest beer, and it was all good. So, yeah. This is a guy, this is in Chiang Rai, and he is an artist, and he created this white temple. Now, remember I said I don't like Buddhist temples because I've been in just too many? Well, this was outside the men's bathroom. It was amazing. Like, I've never seen anything like that in my life. This is a corridor going into the men's bathroom. The ladies didn't have nearly as nice a spot, and I thought, well, that's kind of wrong. If you look carefully in this picture, this is kind of like a waterway, and there's hands reaching their way up to you. So it is very creepy. Yeah. And they would have these biblical kind of things in the Thai culture or in the Buddhist culture that would be along the side. And then there were some interesting ones that just, I don't know, it didn't fit, but it made for a good picture. Kind of like sitting down next to Mr. Gates on Main Street. That's the White Temple from a ways away. Nothing I had seen in a Buddhist temple like this. Just the caricatures were amazing. We stopped at a roadside spot in Laos. I don't know whether you can read it. Basically, the roadside stop was condoms and cabbage. And so everything each of these people are wearing are condoms. And this was the first one that was kind of like a lesser scale stop. And I know I told Gloria at the beginning of the trip, everywhere you go, take toilet paper. She did not take toilet paper. And she came back from the bathroom and says, there's no toilet paper. I said, well, okay. And all the women are going, well, we've got some, we got some. And I said, I had some too. But anyway, you could buy a million different kinds of condoms in this place, drinks and so on, and they had bathrooms. Cabbages and condoms. The most unusual place we stopped at. Anybody want to take a guess what this field is behind me? That's rice field. We were on a bike trip. So part of the thing that I like about the G Adventure trips is you're not doing the big touristy thing where you have 50 people get off a giant tour bus and you all go places. Like 10 of us going on bicycles with a lead person and a back person to make sure we didn't get lost. It was really good. I loved it. And we cooked again. And it was an optional thing, so we all thought, okay, let's do this. So there we are on our bicycles. We got to a place and we did the cooking before. When in Chiang Mai, this is a little bit out of order. When in Chiang Mai, you should do some things that are in Chiang Mai. Has anybody in here ever been to a ladyboy show? That is a man. He looks pretty good. So basically, it was a drag show, and they were hilarious. And our CEO said, well, you're here. If you haven't been, you should really go. And none of us had. So it's like when in Vegas, do what they have in Vegas kind of thing, I guess. Flowers everywhere. This is at a Buddhist temple. And this is all, they've got coverings of gold on them. This one is made out of jade. And like they would be very, very expensive things. You can see the elephant tusks over here. Over here, people would come to get in front of this monk, and he would dip kind of like a, I don't know, something with little stringy bottoms on it, some kind of vegetation. And he'd dip it in water and throw holy water supposedly on you for a donation. But you had to take your shoes off in order to go. That's the other thing. So if you ever travel there, you should have shoes that are easy to put on and easy to take off. Remember I said elephants are revered? This is in all of the temples, they will have some kind of an elephant thing. And I believe this one was, the one we're at now, was on the side of a mountain, and they built the temple where the elephants refused to go higher. I don't think it was that at all. I just think that's kind of the end of the elephants, how far you could push them. This guy over here is making all of this out of concrete. And it was amazing. I stood and watched him for about a half an hour. This was the world of Jim Thompson. I didn't have a clue who he was, but essentially he was a guy who was in Vietnam, liked that part of the world, never came home. And he was responsible for bringing the use of silk back to the outside world. And some of the stuff in there was amazing. Remember I said that I was in a sleeper car, so that's me. I'm in the top bunk. All of our luggage is just randomly left down at the bottom. It was probably my best sleep. It was amazing because the train just goes along and it works out fine. And Gloria got the bottom bunk. Mine was just long enough. There was not a lot of room up there. It worked out. We're in a tuk-tuk here. Does anybody not know what a tuk-tuk is? Tuk-tuk is like a vehicle that's driven by a motorcycle. Behind the driver, there's a roof, and there's either a two-person spot at the back, or there's 4 people can sit back to back. And it feels faster when you're in them than it really is, but it's kind of a wild ride. Gloria had never been in a tuk-tuk before, so she was grinning and screaming the whole way. And of course, there were places where you could get your picture taken. This is the largest reclining Buddha in the world. He's made out of gold, or gold-plated, and he would not even fit in the room. This would maybe fit this part. So it's monstrous. And it's a big tourist trap too, you know. And outside they have these caricatures outside everywhere. Uh, when we were in Bangkok, we had a little tour on the canals. Anybody know what this guy is? He's a water monitor. So you've heard of a monitor lizard. Same idea, only these guys live in water. I'd seen two who were up on a leveled area, and there was a mother otter who looked like she was trying to distract them. I think they were heading towards their little ones. And there we are checking out the various beer. Gloria liked the lighter beer. I like the darker beer. Oh, this is an interesting one. So in between our trip, when the tour started and when the elephant farm business was on, I booked a couple of rooms. So she had a room, I had a room. And our taxi guy drives up front and he parks, and we're going, well, I don't see it. This is nice. It's a Yak guest house is what we're going to. Well, that sign is about this big. The entire front of this hotel is selling marijuana. Gloria was going, she had very little faith in my judgment of places, but there was nothing said anything about this on booking.com. It was just the Yak guest house. And if we wished, there was a free bong for every night that we stayed there. So we each told our families back home, and they got a good chuckle out of that. And her family's going, who are you traveling with and why? We ran into a Chinese festival because it was Chinese New Year's. So these people are all getting ready to do the various dragon dances. These are two pictures. They're funny little drinks you could buy from street vendors, kind of like bubble tea, if you've ever had that. The cold stuff is really good. I really enjoyed it. It's like 50 cents for a big glass of that with ice. And they give it to you with a little tiny plastic bag so you can carry it around. Over here, these are some of the more interesting things. So these are silkworms. These over here are some other kind of worm. Over here, they grasshoppers without arms and legs, or without wings and legs. And over here is tarantulas. Tarantulas were everywhere. They do them up in kind of a spicy thing. You get a bag of tarantulas to go. And our guy last year brought some onto the bus and asked who wants to try them. Only one person did. He bit off a leg and chomped on it, and yeah. Anyway, so there's Gloria standing for. This was the big festival that we caught in on. This is Vietnam in Hanoi, and this is part of Beer Street. When I was there the previous year, because the tour last year started in Hanoi and went through to the bottom end of Cambodia and actually one long bus ride to Bangkok. This is a crowded, busy place, and they'll have men, women dancing outside, and they're trying to attract people to come in. It was pouring rain, so everybody is under these covers. And like a typical bottle of beer over there would be, I don't know, somewhere around $1.50 at the top end. So it was quite cheap. On my previous trip, I wanted to see this, but never got there because it was optional time. This is called Train Street. And in Hanoi, there are shops all along the side where you can go and have a beverage or even a meal. And this train comes swooping by every so often. You can figure out the times or schedules for it. And so you catch a glimpse of this train as it's going by. So this is the two sides of the train area. And half our group is over there, and the other half is over here. And when in Hanoi, this guy here, he was the same guy who was the tour leader from Hanoi. So one of the things that G Adventures does is when you get into certain areas, just like when we were on the Mekong River in Laos, we got a special guy who knew a lot about the area. This guy was very, very knowledgeable about Hanoi. The second time I've been to somebody who's been pickled. Ho Chi Minh, this is his mausoleum. Can't take pictures on the inside. I've seen Mao in Beijing, and he as well is under glass. And it's quite a lineup to get through to see him. One of the other things when you're in Hanoi, and because I like history, I was very intrigued with the Hanoi Hilton. That was the American nickname for this. It's where they took the prisoners of war during the Vietnam War. The men here were typically shackled with 1 foot every day, sitting on benches like that. This was typically the clothing, or they wore much less because it was so hot, and they had big doors out front. In days past, the French looked after Vietnam, and the Hanoi Hilton was used as a jail back then. And you could see that they had their guillotine set up for one of the things to see. This time, I wore headphones so I could follow along and listen. I've been there twice, and I have yet to get all of it done, so I'll have to maybe go back a third time and what the top floor is like. Okay, we are going to have egg tea. Has anybody ever had egg tea? It is delicious. They made 7 glasses of egg tea in front of us at this place. And basically they would take 2 egg yolks, not the whites, and it would go into a blender. Way back then they didn't have blenders, but that would be blended up. And they would have 2 capfuls of rum for 7 glasses, coffee, cinnamon, I think there was some kind of chocolate powder, and I can't remember the other one. It was all mixed together and poured into a glass. The coffee is added, and it's not boiling hot because the egg would start to curdle. And so the cup is actually set in another cup that has water in it. So it prevents it from curdling. And I think I had egg coffee while I was over there about 3-4 different times. It was all good. In Hanoi, they say you're supposed to go to the water puppet show. When I was there last year's trip, it was an optional thing to go. This is water. These people are all standing in water. Normally, they're behind this little area here, so you can't see them. And they operate puppets out front. There's a group of musicians, and over on this side, there are people that are singing. It was raining outside. It was very cool. It was very warm and dark inside. There was more than one of us besides me who fell asleep partway through the water puppet show. This is a very, very big thing over there for people to go to see this. And they would have, avoid the lineups, get the speed tickets so you can, and then there was still the ticket to get in. And so they would, like it was all set up to get in a full house, and they had a full house. I did not see all of it. This is a typical bun, like a sub bun, you would call it here. But over there, they call it banh mi. And a banh mi is actually quite delicious. You can tell them what you want in it, and they will put whatever you want. And if you want spicy sauce, they will do that. In the previous year, we went to a place that the name always escapes me. The guy that goes around the world tasting food in different countries. He passed away a couple of years ago. Anthony Bourdain. Well, the lineup at that place to get a banh mi, because he said it was good, was like it was ridiculous. But they moved people through very quickly. They had a bakery next door, and they provided fresh buns. It was wonderful. This is a typical room that I had. Does anybody know what this is used for? So some of the places, this is where your toilet paper would go. Yeah, and they would typically have a bidet of some sort over here, which I thought I would get a shower doing. I've never used one of those, but yeah. This is a small bed. Most of them were far bigger. So compared with hotels that I've stayed in Canada, every single one that I stayed in was far superior to everything that I've stayed in Canada. Gloria and I went on a foodie tour, and this is when we finally got to the place. We were supposed to go to this church. We were waiting in the hotel, and these 2 guys come in looking for Gloria and Rob. We said, "No, we're them." And said, "Okay, good, come on with us." And I was expecting a bus outside. No bus. 2 motorcycles. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Hanoi, but if you have not been to Hanoi, you are not prepared for the cluster of bikes, motorbikes, and vehicles. There are no rules. You just weave in and out of traffic. Lights mean nothing. Pedestrian crosswalks mean nothing, except don't stop once you start in a crosswalk because you'll die before you get to the end. I had 2 near-death experiences on the motorbike getting to this church, which was probably less than a 5-minute ride. But interesting enough, Gloria's driver, who is the main guy, we got to an area where we were slowed down, almost stopped, and then he veers off to the left, and my guy goes forward. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I done booking this tour? And what is this guy doing with Gloria? And where did she go? And so on. Everything was good. She showed up. They were there before us. So we went for a variety of things in place. So you could add whatever you wanted to this kind of almost like a paper thin thing that you could add stuff to. It was very good. There's the egg coffee. Very good. Oh, and backing up here, just one little thing. The place we stayed at in Hanoi, after the tour, it was called the Sono Hanoi Hotel. We came in, we booked. She had a room, I had a room, and when we came downstairs, hi, Mr. Rob, how are you? Hi, Miss Gloria, how are you? Every time all of the staff saw us, we always got a Mr. Rob or a Miss Gloria. I've never seen that in anything in Canada. It was absolutely amazing. And whenever the taxi came to get us for something, they would walk in front of us to prevent the traffic from running us over. Seriously, that's a big problem in Hanoi. You have to see it to believe it. We went to Halong Bay, which is a boat ride away, and you go out and you see the cars coming out of the water. One of the stops was a pearl museum. And so the lady over here is actually figuring out the size of the pearls. This one is putting pretend pearls in to make them bigger. And it's a big business. We didn't buy any pearls, but it was amazing. This is our boat to get out there. They all look the same. There's like about 2,000 of them on the water. And they all are coming in. They all give you a food on the way. My last year's trip, we spent the night on the boat, and they served breakfast, dinner, and supper on the boat. It was actually pretty good. So these are cars. It looks kind of like a James Bond kind of setting, and quite neat. As part of the tour that we had booked, you got on these boats and they'd row you through this tunnel that got you to an open area on the other side. Another thing was this walk up to this cave. It was not a small walk, but once you're up there, you're inside something that, if you've ever been to Lewis and Clark Caverns, which is just south of us, across the border, probably the biggest cavern I've ever been in. They're not nearly as big as, massive. And there's just a couple of shots from the inside. That's the lookout, looking back. Multitude of boats. They're only allowed to park, let people off, and then move out because there's going to be another boat coming back in. That's about it. I do want to share with you a couple things. Conversion rates. In Thailand, 100 Canadian dollars gets you 300 baht. So it's a 3-to-1. I really like going and putting $100 into the cash machines in Laos and Vietnam. 100 Canadian gets you 1,600,000 kip. We're all millionaires with $100 in Canadian. In Vietnam, they use the dong, it's called. And there it's 100 Canadian gets you 1,800,000 dong. So when you travel to that part of the world, it's not like going to the States where it's kind of the reverse, where you're paying for it and almost the same as what we would pay here, but now you have the conversion rate on top. So it's very cheap. When there were in between, I could have slept in a different place, but because Gloria was with me, I didn't want to make sure that her room was up to standard. So I moved up to the $15 to $30 rooms. That's a hotel room over there. That's breakfast included. So if you were traveling in that neck of the woods, your money goes a very long ways, and that is the attraction for me. So if you are going on a tour, like a cruise ship, 9 out of 10 times you're going to spend $350 to $500 on a hotel room the night before, and the same amount afterwards. You could go from hotel to hotel in that part of the world and live on that kind of money for a month. So I would highly recommend G Adventures as a tour group to go with. I've traveled with them 3 times. So I went into Everest with them, which is a way different trip. That was back in 2009. My daughter had done with her husband as their honeymoon. They went to the Galapagos, and she thought that was amazing. And I went from Vietnam to Cambodia. I think Vietnam is my favorite country, but I have this pull on me that takes me back to the elephant farm in Thailand. So if you're ever looking for a place to go where you're in a small group tour of, we had 10, but they could have as many as 12. Most of the people in the group were Brits or Canadians, but I've had one lady who was mid-40s, and there was a girl traveling with her mother, and the girl must have been maybe 19, 20. So you get a little bit of everything, but it seems like when it's time to go on out and do something on free time, it was never, well, I want to go and get a Diet Coke like Gloria wanted to every night. You wouldn't go just by yourself. There'd be like 8 people going with you. And it wasn't like you'd show up on a big 50-passenger bus and now have 50 people, like getting off a tour bus when cruises come in. That's kind of the norm there. Now it's massive chaos wherever you go. We would get a place, we'd go to a restaurant, our CEO would recommend 2 meals at each of the places. One was always in the cheaper side, and one was on the middle side, and he'd eaten there before many times. So that's a good thing. The other thing that G Adventures does is at least every country they go to, you go and you are getting, they provide some kind of opportunities for the people to improve their lives. So it would be a restaurant where they would take street kids, they would give them a place to stay, give them education, and train them in the restaurant business so that when they got through their schooling, they would be looked after. In the homestay in this little community that we were at in Laos, it was basically you'd stay in people's houses and they'd learn English. Spoke to them in English. I have no idea what the grandfather was saying one morning when I woke up. It's the first one in our group up, and he asked if I wanted tea. Tea? That was his only word in English. And he made me some tea, and we nodded, and you know, you don't always have to have words, but now everybody's cell phones has Google Translate. As long as you have pay for the data, you can use that wherever you go. For myself, almost never did I run into a place where they did not know English. And if I could say something about Asian airports versus Canadian airports, we've got a long ways to go to catch up with what they do there. Bangkok Airport is amazing. In a flight that's an hour long to go from Bangkok to Chiang Mai, everybody got a small water, they got a half a sandwich, and they got some kind of a little treat. Just Bangkok, I don't know what the name of the... Yeah. It starts with an S. Yeah, I don't know. But, you know, travel is very easy by air, and you could take the train like I did, because that was part of our tour, but the flight was like $120 return. And that'd be like going to Vancouver and coming back. If anybody's ever flown from some other international destination to Vancouver, you know the frustration arriving in Vancouver, because you got to get your luggage, you got to get through to customs, and then you got to get your stuff on the next flight, and it's absolute chaos. And there's nobody there to tell you where to go. In Asia, you don't have that problem. It is really quite good. And if you do travel, I would highly recommend arranging for a taxi through the hotel you're staying at. As you come off the airplane, you have no idea where to go. You got your luggage, and now you go on out, and it's kind of bedlam. And then you see your name on a placard, and you go and, oh yes, okay, and away we go. They might not know English, but your ticket is already paid for with the taxi, and away you go. So that's a suggestion. Hotels over there will actually book some side trips for you as well. Like when we were off the tour, we did the Halong Bay, we did a foodie tour thing on our own, and we did a cooking class in Chiang Mai on our own. And most hotels will do that for you. So, yeah, anyway, that's my presentation. Are there any questions? No, a month, all of February. I left at the beginning of February and I came back, I think it was the 29th last year. And the Vietnam one, I did that was 19-day tour. And then I was 6 days on a beach in Koh Samui. It was $124 a night for the room for 6 nights in Koh Samui. Yeah, I know, it boggles the mind. But anyway, any other questions? Oh, it's a Canadian company. Yeah, it used to be called Great Adventure Company. Now they call it G Adventures. They're based out of Toronto. And if you ever have questions, you can call and somebody will talk to you about it, because sometimes I don't know traveling in that part of the world. But once you've been, you're kind of hooked. And if you go to that elephant farm, I think you'll be hooked even further. Anyway, thanks for listening.